Understand something, guys. Nothing worth ever having in this world comes easy.
Do what these champions doing if you're going to be a champion.
You control your outcome.
Who am I?
I'm a champion.
What up, champs, and welcome back to a brand new breakdown powered by Biosteel. As always, I'm your host, Adrian, with my co-host,
Sylvie.
And we're back. We're breaking it down. We do one of these every week. If it's your first time joining, welcome. If you're a long-time listener, thank you, as always. And again, if you have questions, please send them our way. Shoot us a DM. Post something below. Let us know. Right?
Topics.
We always need topics. So, speaking of topics, what is this week's topic, Sil?
We are talking about saunas.
Sauna. We are talking about how the Eastern Europeans knew their stuff. That's what we're talking about. Do you like saunas?
I love saunas.
I think it's a real love-hate relationships.
I love to sweat.
Yeah, but people who have never cut weight before, I think, like saunas more than people who have cut weight. I think there's like an emotional response that goes with it. But I do love saunas. And whenever I think about saunas, I think about like Eastern European fighters, and in all their training videos, they always have some aspect of a sauna, usually outside in the woods. And so it's like snow, like contrast work. But we're learning more and more about them. And we're learning, like, science is supporting the theories that I think people had well before. Right. And so we're going to talk about saunas today, why you should use them, how long, that sort of thing. First and foremost, I think mentally there's a huge benefit to spending time in the sauna. It's terribly uncomfortable the entire time. And it teaches you an aspect, of mental discipline that's tough to get elsewhere. I would liken it to doing really difficult exercise, but you're not really doing anything. You're just sitting there, I guess. But that alone, I think, is valuable. Obviously, a quick legal caveat: this is for informational purposes, and this is stuff that we have used in our own life. But I am not advocating that you go and do that. I'm not saying that you should go and do a sauna. I'm saying there's amazing benefits, but it has to be right for you, and you might want to check with a medical professional first. Right? We don't need people to go in the sauna and pass out, because that does happen and it is dangerous. So be conscientious of that. That being said, amazing benefits physically and from a brain perspective. So let's talk about the endurance benefits, the endurance improvements to begin with, because I think that's a good spot to start. Saunas have been used post-workout or as separate sessions for a very, very long time. Typically, we're looking at three to four sessions a week. 20 minutes is a good range, and you'll see a bunch of different benefits. Primarily for endurance, it improves our thermal control. And so when you're in there and uncomfortable with the temperature, your body starts to regulate at that temperature, and it improves your sweat rate, which means that when you go and exercise and you're put in a hot state or you're in an uncomfortable position, your body's better at regulating. It'll start sweating earlier, it'll stay sweating longer, but it'll be more consistent. And so you're not fluctuating up and down so much, so you can stay cognizant and present and not overheat. Which can also be a big deal if you're going to compete in somewhere that's warm as well, right? If you typically train for whatever your event is, if you run marathons, for example, and you train in Toronto and then you go down to Arizona and you have to run inside that Arizona sauna, which is significant. So that's the first benefit. The second is that it improves blood flow to our extremities, which is really, really important because it means that we can remove waste and also send glucose and essential fats out to the muscles to be used, which means we don't need to tap into our glycogen stores that are in our muscles. Right, Sil?
Yeah.
Did I get this right?
Yeah.
But why is that valuable? That's valuable because then you don't hit a wall. So if I haven't taken my glycogen stores from my muscle, I can continue to work and I can bring them from other areas of the body. I can bring glucose in from the bloodstream, which is really, really important. That's why you'll see, like with runners, the idea of hitting a wall where you're going, and then all of a sudden you have no energy left. So that's another positive benefit of the sauna. It improves that process within our body. The last one is that it improves our stroke volume, so the amount of blood that the heart can pump. And this is really important because it means that we can perform the same amount of work with a much lower workload. This is why we do aerobic activity. If we spend time letting our heart fill up completely with blood and then contract, we improve the amount of blood that we can hold within one pump, which means we can pump our heart less times a minute, which means the work is easier for us. This is valuable if we're going to do some sort of endurance race, but also just for walking around. You're living with a resting heart rate, there's less stress on it. So those are the three big benefits from a performance perspective. looking at endurance, it also has benefits to strength training and has benefits to muscle hypertrophy and specifically coming back from injuries when you've had a muscle that's started to waste away and atrophy. And that's through a system called heat shock proteins. And so Rhonda Patrick is the goat on all of this. I know you have
My favorite.
you have a huge crush on her.
Yeah, she's the best.
She's been on probably every podcast that talks about health, talking about the importance of heat shock proteins, and now her focus is also on cold shock proteins, which is like through what we talked about last week, through cold therapy. But heat shock proteins, simplified down to the most basic level, are proteins triggered from extreme heat exposure, and they prevent protein degradation by removing free radicals out of our system. And then they also repair proteins that didn't properly form. So when our proteins are being formed, sometimes they can fold over on themselves or have deficiencies in it. And so our heat shock proteins will go in and tidy those up. So we have a better, we have better formation, cleaner proteins within our body. And so this is important because if we're stopping the proteins from being broken down by free radicals, it means that we're improving our ability to build muscle. And so we are improving our ability to increase our muscle size, and we have hypertrophy and strength gains as a result of it. It also helps when we're coming back from an atrophied state where we really do need to build back. It's important that these proteins are formed properly coming back in as we increase our muscle size and our strength again. The second thing that it does is it triggers the release of growth hormone. And so being in the sauna will trigger growth hormone within our body, which further supports our muscle growth. And it also improves our insulin sensitivity. And we were talking about this earlier, how you knock it out for me here, how you want to have.
Yeah, you want to have a sensitivity to insulin because it means that it's working efficiently for you. Whereas if you have insulin resistance, it means that your body has used insulin too much from increased amount of sugars, and having that response where insulin helps shuttle the sugars into the cells. And if we do that too much, we become resistant to it. So we actually want to have more insulin sensitivity to be able to use insulin to its best of ability and to help things like hypertrophy and strength training.
So we can actually build the muscle.
Exactly. So it actually,
Shuttles
insulin is a anabolic hormone, so meaning that it builds us up, and so we want it to be able to do those functions for us, especially when we're training hard and get the benefits. But if we become insulin resistant, that's very difficult to do. We have a lot more fat storage from that.
And then the last thing that was really that I thought was really, really interesting is that the mental benefits that the sauna is going to give you. And so they saw a increase in norepinephrine, and we talked about that again last week on how that having an increase in norepinephrine improves our mood and improves a variety of different functions within our body, but then also a decrease in cortisol. So spending time in the sauna decreases your cortisol, increases your norepinephrine, which increases your mood, decreases your risk of depression, as well as a bunch of other things, and also helps with the myelination of our neurons. So improves our neuron function as well. So it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool stuff.
It's pretty cool. So I'm actually really excited about it. I didn't really know this much about it until we did this breakdown. So that's been fantastic. If you want more information on it, definitely Google the name Rhonda Patrick. She talks about this at length, and there's a bunch of different protocols that you can use for your time in the sauna. Obviously, start with a lower temperature and then look to increase it. You want to aim for 3 to 4 days a week. Let's say 2 to 3. To get the benefits. Post workout's a fantastic time to do it. And you're looking for like a 30-minute sauna, like 20 to 30-minute sauna, 3 to 4, 2 to 3 times a week. So
awesome.
That's it. Any other things?
I think that's it.
Awesome, guys. If you have any other questions, please send us our way. As always, head over to the website, biosteel.com. Use the code word
Champ Lifestyle, capital C, capital L.
And you can grab 15% off your very next order. And we will be back next week with a brand new breakdown.